Welcome to the first Stygian guide for Naya. We have a few returning phases this time, and a new boss, so let's get into it. Keep in mind that this guide is geared towards Fearless, and that the following enemies will have some changes in Menacing and below. Given that 2 of the bosses are repeats, quote unquote, there will be more attack pattern analysis this time. For the first boss, we have the first instance of Stellar Shill with this line. It has 23.3 million HP in Dire and 10.7 million HP in Fearless. They'll spawn in with a 40U Electro Shield. 16 units of the shield will be immediately depleted after taking an instance of stellar related damage. The most effective elements to break this shield will be Pyro, Cryo, and Dendro. If you're planning on fighting with this boss, make sure you have at least one of these elements reliably at the ready, such that you can take this shield out quickly. If you're planning on taking this boss with using Bennett in the party, 4-piece Thundering Fury might actually be a good option to bring, just because it gives Bennett lower cooldowns, and allows him to spam his skill much more often, which allows for faster shield breaking. Yes, you do lose either Noblesse or Instructor, depending on what you put on your Bennett nowadays, but getting the faster shield breaking is a little bit more valuable than the EM and 20% attack buff, in my opinion. 100% of the stellar damage received, plus 30% from all other sources, will transfer to the boss's HP bar after the shield gets broken. Afterwards, the boss enters a paralyzed state where all of its resistances drop to -60%, except for Cryo, which drops to -120%. The other annoying mechanic this boss has is that it'll take to the skies before landing and starting an Animo Orb sequence similar to the Swanee, where it spawns several Animo Orbs. Preventing it from absorbing these orbs as Animo prevents it from unleashing its ultimate attack, so you'll need some units that are either Pyro, Hydro, Electro, or Cryo. Additionally, stellar reactions can immediately break the boss out of this mode. Based on footage from the creator server, the way the Chimera flies is by going effectively 90 degrees from where it starts from to the front of the arena. That's what I can tell anyway based on creator server footage. It's likely that this will be subject to change, so just do keep that in mind. Teams-wise, the easiest that will be able to deal with this boss are Cryo DPS ones. Obviously, DPS Sandrone, CMC, Sino, Risley with a stellar conduct focus can clear, as well as stellar swirl teams with Mizuki. Outside of the Shill, Skirk is by and large the easiest to brute force with, because you can still slot in a stellar cryo unit for the 4th slot to more quickly take down the shield and deal damage. Weaker teams are also capable in this regard. Just note that since the shield is Electro, both Overload and Melt teams will require some amount of rotation adjustment to optimize for shield breaking. As for the second boss, we have a rerun of the Fatui Operative with 17.5 million HP in Dire and 8.1 million HP in Fearless. This is actually the Animo version, so the attack patterns are somewhat different. Overall though, this boss operates in the same manner as the original Fatui Operative. It starts off with spawning a white shield, then applying Bowl to your characters. Standing on constructs won't prevent the Bowl shield from going up, unlike last time, and fall damage tech is supposed to not work properly, but I suspect that there will be some instance in Windows where you can actually stagger this enemy and make it take fall damage. After the shield breaks, the Fatui takes around 20% of the HP in self-damage and is paralyzed for a short duration. They'll try to go through 3 attack pattern strings before putting up its shield again, effectively repeating the fight. I have made a semi-formal attack pattern flowchart for this boss, at least for one cycle, and it's likely that this one follows the same exact flowchart, just with slightly different attack patterns. So for example, it won't do the triple slash, it'll just try to chuck you on the head with an Animo Lance. Now, I kind of alluded to this before. Last time this Fatui came out, quite a few people cheesed it with Jean. However, this time, they purposely made it so that this boss no longer gets staggered. That's what they say anyway, but I predict again that there might be a window where this boss can still get staggered due to the observed limitations of Genshin's combat engine. Stagger tech that shouldn't be possible on mobs like the Way-Ups in Abyss are possible due to Genshin having frame windows where altered enemy poise values and behavior are dropped. However, that's just a prediction and nothing concrete. You shouldn't expect there to be a way to cheese this boss, and if there is, expect it to be difficult to execute properly. The Fatui is more flexible in general with teams since there aren't any elemental restrictions or needs. Most teams that have 100k DPS or higher should breeze through this boss at Fearless, so things like lunar-based teams, certain Hexerite teams, Mafwika Skirk, Stellar teams should be completely fine into this boss at Fearless, with more investment needed at Dire. The only thing to really note is that because it starts off with a white shield, amplifying reactions don't work properly. And finally, we have the Knuckle Duckle, which is 25.9 million HP in Dire and 13.1 million HP in Fearless. The boss starts off with spawning 5 ducklings and putting up a white shield. Each duckling that gets taken out reduces the shield by 20%. These ducks have different resistance values between difficulty that significantly change what you can play into this boss. For Menacing and below, the ducks have significant resistance increase to all elemental damage, being 150% resistance, forcing you to use either lunar or electrocharge teams, assuming you aren't brute forcing. They also do 5% of the boss's max HP in terms of damage when they get blown up, independent of how much damage was dealt to the ducklings before they get launched at the boss. For Fearless and above, the ducks have 10% resistance to all damage instead. However, they do 25% of the damage dealt to them to the boss's HP bar, meaning that Electrocharge is effectively worthless at the higher difficulties despite the ease of breaking through the shield phase faster. This dichotomy is because Knuckle Duckle would basically make everything look garbage in comparison to Lunar Charge teams more than it does now, had the same exact mechanics carried over to the higher difficulties. So just keep in mind what difficulty you're fighting at and what the differences are here. As for grouping the ducks, there is a trick to prevent them from spreading apart. In their natural position, they align themselves in a vertical plane, like so. You'll want to manipulate the trajectory of the Knuckle Duckle such that the path it takes is parallel to this plane with the visual above. Doing this will prevent the ducklings from spreading out due to the boss's movement. Another thing to keep in mind when doing this trick is what charging pattern the Knuckle Duckle is doing, as the two possible patterns have different behavior. During the shield phase, the Knuckle Duckle will either charge you with a flurry of punches, or while windmilling. For the flurry of punches, the Knuckle Duckle will just charge through, independent of whether you get hit or not or whatever object it goes through. This is different for the windmill attack, which will stop and land a plunge attack if the boss detects a hit while charging. Knowing these differences between attack patterns will make it easier to group the ducks and hopefully less RNG. On the left here is a flowchart detailing this, so you can refer to this when you're doing your own one. Once the shield is broken, the boss is stunned for about 12 seconds before putting shield back up around 35 to 37 seconds in realistically. For teams in Menacing and below, you'll want Electro/Lunar Charge based teams simply because of the duck mechanic difference. As for Fearless and above, you'll want to steer clear of Electro Charge teams because they won't have the damage to deal with the increased boss's HP pool, and don't make use of the lowered resistance on the ducks. So things like Mafwika Overload is fine. Zubai teams also were able to do it, of course. As you can imagine, Flynn's is directly shield, so Flynn's Lunar Charge is one to be the best in the slot for dealing with this kind of boss. And, well, also Stellar Conduct and Stellar teams in general will also be able to deal with it just because they meet the DPS requirements. Honestly, the pool of teams that can do each of these bosses is pretty much the same this cycle overall speaking, because a lot of the teams that are meta had either ways to deal with Electro Shields or just dealing damage in general, which is the only real requirement to break the Knuckle Duckle and Fatui shields. So just keep that in mind. Right? That's basically it for this guide. If you have any questions, please leave them down below, and thank you for watching. See you next time.